I suppose this is a good enough time as ever to begin our discussion of Salò
Salò.
or the 120 Days of Sodom,
All right,
which
just
Jeez, a
real
dream come
quick though,
true.
let's hear everybody's pronunciation of it.
Salò.
Salò.
So you say Salò, you say Salò, and I've been saying Salò this whole time.
Salò is definitely the worst out of all three.
It is. No, it is. But it's not Salo.
Definitely
No,
not Salò.
no. Okay.
Salo
Definitely
is
not.
the worst one of them. But
Salu.
yes.
Okay, so
Continue.
I am on the BFI top 100 of all time list, and I would like to bring to light the fact that this is the most egregious example of ties on their list because
Really?
yes, Salò is tied at 75 with at least 8 movies.
Oh.
Los Olvidados, Jaws, Salò, The Wild Bunch, Husbands, Kiss, Fear Eats the Soul, A Clockwork Orange, Mulholland Drive, The General, The Shining, There Will Be Blood, M, Battleship Potemkin, Cachet, The Seventh Seal.
Fuck?
Good
What
lord.
the fuck?
These are all
Uniform the
tied at
list.
75.
Oh my god. We're going to be doing this forever.
Those are some good. There's a wide variety of quality in that list, if you ask me.
Yeah, this is Jaws right next to Salò.
Well, I mean, they're both the perfect summer blockbuster film.
Oh, of
Both
course.
very family friendly.
I watch Salò every summer with my family.
God.
Don't you? All right, so I don't know where to begin. This film is
It's notorious.
notorious is an understatement. This is like
It really, yeah.
if you were to pick
It is
the
so
definition
notorious.
of
Yeah.
notorious.
It is so notorious that it is a meme now.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately.
Salò is one of the more popular, I don't want to say criterion memes, but cinephile memes. I swear to God, if anyone watches the in the Criterion Closet videos, I feel like there's at least good 10 to 20% of the videos will jokingly bring up Salò, except for Gaspar Noé, who I 100% believe really loves this movie.
It's true.
How can he not?
I was talking on the Criterion Discord about just how negative this joking has had an effect on the film, though.
In what way?
Like, just sort of degrading its actual prominence as a film and what it's saying. It's become more of the joke than anything else.
Yeah, because
which is just sad, especially because Pasolini would like rip his face off if he saw what was going on.
Well, the more I read about Pasolini, the more I'm not sure we should be catering to his desires necessarily. But I think we're probably going to be talking more about like philosophy on film in general with this discussion than we are about the film.
Yeah.
But I do want to just in generally say this is a 1975 film by Italian director Pier Paolo Pasolini. It is a film that takes place in the Italian fascist government puppet government that was formed by Hitler and Mussolini. And from like 1923, capital in the town of Salò. This was when the Allies, I think, had already landed, or at least were starting to attack the southern Europe. And Salò takes place in the final year or so of that regime. And it's about 4 libertines, whatever that means.
Libertines.
And the fascists who kidnap a bunch of good-looking young people and force them to do weird things.
Weird is understatement of the year.
In a summer home.
Drinking chocolate milk with ice is weird. This is not weird. It's not a quirky thing that just happened.
Man, that was so crazy.
Let's go in a circle and tell our general thoughts and feelings. I know Chandler and I own the Salò Criterion.
Yeah, we had to buy it. Well, I had to buy it. Jacob already had it, and I guess
this is the first planned ahead in November. So.
Oh, okay. Oh God.
Yeah.
So
I knew it
you
wasn't
had,
anywhere online, and so I picked it up during the last Barnes and
it's
Noble
also
sale.
hard. It's decently hard to find in stores too. It's
It's
not for
currently
sale on
out
the
of print
Criterion
on
website.
yeah.
Yeah. I had to go
Really?
to, I had to
Yeah.
drive like 30 minutes to a Barnes and Noble, kind of out of my way just to get it. Well, I'll start, I guess.
Yeah.
It's horrible. It's a horrible movie, but I do think it's good, and I do think the horridness has a point that is pretty powerful. I understand that it has a reputation. I do think the reputation definitely is earned. But I don't think it's as ew, gross, look, disgusting as people make it out to be. I think there's a very clear criticism going on, and I do find it more interesting as like a sort of simulation of the psychology behind somebody with absolute power than I do an actual like narrative, because I don't really think there's not much of a narrative.
There's no narrative.
No.
The
Yeah.
narrative is
I was
complete.
thinking
Essentially, there's three. You could essentially cut this movie down into 3 scenes, and it still tell the same story.
Yeah.
Oh, I was totally thinking like basically the story starts and ends with the very first frame of actual scene where the 4 libertines are riding the regiment.
Mhm.
Basically that right there, that's the story. That's the whole, rise and fall. These 4 men have decided that they will control the fate of a group of young people to do depraved sex acts,
Mhm.
and at the end, everybody dies.
Yeah.
Well, it's like the first 15 minutes of them rounding them up, and then you could essentially have like one scene in the middle of them
Oh
doing
yeah,
weird
yeah.
stuff,
Like
and then at the end they die, and that's it. That's the
yeah.
only
I
plot.
mean, what happens in between those points is basically pointless, just because they're all totally equal, just showcase of terrible things. They aren't
Yeah.
like you know they don't have any minute detail that you can pick out and be like, this part has far more significance.
Mhm.
It's just showing you what the Nazis were like, basically.
Well, I feel like it's not even about like the Nazis in particular, because most
Sure.
Nazis,
Yeah,
I'm
of course,
assuming, are not
anybody.
as sexually deprived as what was going on in this film. But it is about like the depths of what the human soul can go to under if it's given
course.
free reign to do stuff like
You
this.
see, that's the thing is, because I think a very important thing to note is the time frame in which the movie presents itself. It was either 1944 or 1945. Is it 1945?
It's both.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
to
Okay. Yeah.
believe.
Yeah. Because it's 120 days, which, if you ask me, they don't do a necessarily great job of, portraying the time, but that's another topic.
It's northern Italy, so it's always beautiful.
The 1944-1945 time frame, I think, is very important because it suggests that this is the tail end of fascism in Italy, but it also suggests that the people behind these acts, the fascists, I think that the extremes that they go to, at first it could seem like it's just shock, they're just trying to show shock, but I think the time frame is significant because it shows that these are people who have been given absolute power for a few years now, and I feel like the whatever, they're desensitized to the what they can do to other people, to the point where it's tribal at this point.
I think it's also important to understand that this is at the end of the war. You never really get a sense of World War II going on in this film. Like there's none of it whatsoever. Maybe some airplanes flying overhead here and there. But you do, if you think about it from a historical context, you know that they know that things are going downhill. Like they are not, fascism is not on the rise anymore, and their days are numbered. And I think it's very telling that these people choose to do this and continue to do so at a time when they're losing.
Yeah. But it's almost like they're going for broke.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I could either, stop and fess up to my crimes, or I can just do everything I want to because they know their time.
It's almost true evil.
Mhm.
It's like this is what they actually want. They're not trying to hide anything because they know,
Right.
they could hide things and they
Yeah.
make it better for them, perhaps, but they're not.
But yeah, and
But they won't
you
get
see
this
that,
opportunity again.
Yeah.
right, and you see that in real life examples in World War II, where once they find out that that's it for them, they go and they kill all the prisoners. They do all sorts of brutal things. It's sort of like in a fight or flight reaction. It's just sort of
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's painfully nihilistic, but I don't think it's nihilistic in a way that is without purpose.
right.
There is not an ounce of humanity either on the fascist side or in the teenager side. Because I think there are some people like the curly haired teenager who sort of gives in. That there's like three basic reactions that these teenagers have. One is there's a few that try to escape and they're killed, which honestly is probably the way to go. There's the other way where they just want to endure it and they want to see if they can live.
It's just that like nothingness, like they just shut down.
Yes,
kind of.
Yeah.
And
then there's the third one, which they go along with it, which you definitely see with some of them.
Right, and you see they actually get rewarded.
Yeah.
In surviving.
Yeah, and you can definitely tell towards the end that there's a certain point where they're just broken down. They have nothing. They're long past the point of protest, the point of resistance. It's just kind of, this is their life now. It's become normalized to them, which is terrifying in its own right. But yeah, it's good Lord.
But and I guess in that way though, is there's the fourth type in that regard, sort of in the part that have sort of accepted it and are going along with it. It's how you treat your fellow man.
Yeah.
Because there's the character Ezio, who's my favorite character. And you see sort of this very interesting chain of events where the boy tells, I believe it's the magistrate or one of the libertines, that he knows that one of the girls has a picture under her pillow. And so they go to get her because that's breaking the rules. And then she's like, I know.
Else.
Where these two women, where these two of the captured women have lesbian relations. And then they go there and they're like, no, I know.
Here's a quick question.
That
Sorry
the
for
boy
the
sleeps with
tangent.
the black maid.
Weren't in the rules in the very beginning that you're not allowed to have male and female relations? As far as I'm aware, it didn't say anything about homosexual relations.
I think just in general, though, I think the rule is that you cannot have any sort of sex without their consent. Because if you recall,
it really wasn't that clear, I think. But
if you recall during the marriage, the boy tries to penetrate.
Well, yeah, but
and they're like, no, that's for us. You can't do anything unless we tell you.
But that's a heterosexual relationship.
Yeah, but I doubt
it's not clear. That's all I'm saying. I think you're probably right.
They treat heterosexual and homosexual relations equally.
It is very interesting that is the case. That there's not really much of a distinction made between any sexual act here. It's all the same.
Right, anyway, and it's almost not even like a homosexual thing. It's almost just sort of like a pure, just give me all the sex thing.
Yeah.
Sex is sex, kind of.
Yeah, just whatever it is. But I think Ezio is truly a.
If we haven't stated already,
progressive.
we may be talking about some.
It's going to get
uncomfortable things. Yeah. If it hasn't already.
Yeah.
And then what leads to my favorite scene is Ezio being confronted by the libertines having sex with the maid. And then instead of ratting out his other men like everybody before him does, he simply throws up the socialist salute and says, I'm not going to,
the chain of blame ends with him.
Because definitely, and like makes total sense today when we're talking about people, sort of uh, race defying and selling ourselves out to each other,
Mm-hmm.
is that these people all have the same interest in staying alive and getting out of this, but they know it breaks down, and most of the people, which I think Pasolini is trying to show as the Italian populace, is just they don't like it, but they're gonna grit it,
Mm-hmm.
and if they have a chance to get ahead, then they'll sell out the people who don't even hurt them for the people who do.
Yeah.
And that's definitely one of the main themes in Salò.
Yeah.
So here's my I watched Salò, and I wow, that's something to say. I watched Salò.
So
can we, at the very least, can we say at least this is done with? This is not only, I feel like this is not only a BFI bucket list type thing. It's just, I feel like everyone should see it.
Yep.
And I'm glad that I have seen it.
Well, I was about to say that I think that no one needs to see this.
Really?
I think that you are far better off in terms of most people with the idea of Salò, because I'm not sure. Okay, ultimately, I guess my question for you two, because you two appear to seem to like it more than I do.
Yeah,
it's just that, what do you get out of this that justifies watching it? Not that justifies its existence. I think its existence is important in and of itself. That it was created, and that Pier Paolo Pasolini had a vision, and I'm happy that he made it. I don't even find it all that gruesome and disgusting from a modern perspective. It is those things, but we're kind of desensitized at this point, and when it was released, I'm sure it was a much different reaction. I can only imagine.
Call of Duty.
My God. Yeah. But
75. The Brady Bunch just started sleeping in the same bed.
What about the human soul is this trying to express that is worth people taking the time to look at it? Because it's honestly, the thing I'm most proud of this film about is that it flies by. It was not boring for what it was, and that's often a problem I have with movies. It did not have a pacing problem. Other than that, I got to the end and I'm like, okay, cool. I'm not sure why this had to be this long, or why you had to go into this depth to communicate the ideas you were trying to communicate. And I'm not saying that isn't there. I am very curious to hear, because that's why I was looking into the special features, and I wanted to know more. And I want to hear from you too. Like, what are you getting out of it that justifies watching it?
Okay, this is different. As far as justifying watching it, this is not something I don't think I'll be revisiting anytime soon. But as far as what you get out of it, I think the length really adds to the sense of depravity. And I think that this movie, as indescribable as it is, the best thing I can call it is a horror. Not in the sense that it uses the genre to sort of metaphorically tackle human issues. It's a sort of psychological experiment or representation of the deepest lengths of human evil. And I think it's important. I watched this and I felt just a sense of defeat, and I don't want to say sadness, but just brokenness that most other movies can't give me. And I think a huge part of why that is because on the surface it seems like torture porn, but that historical context really manages to be effective, because these kinds of things happened and they still happen. I think it's important in that sense to just sort of remind you that you want to separate yourself from this evil, but it really is hard to tell, given the proper circumstances, how you would react in a situation like this.
So here's my counter argument to that. I think that the film is very one note in its portrayal and repetitive. And
Yes.
the moment when the one guy raises his hand and refuses to back down and gets shot. I think
Mhm.
that's one of the moments, one of like three minutes in the entire film where humanity kind of shines through. That and when
Mhm.
the pianist jumps out the window.
Yeah.
I think those are very telling moments in the film, but they're very, very small, and the rest of it's quite repetitive in what it's trying to get at. And I guess my counter argument here is a film like Come and See, which is also
Yeah.
filled with the utter depravity that humans can go to, and
Mhm.
yet there is a much greater range of responses and um, ideas in that film about how
Yeah.
people respond in a way to this.
I'm not gonna say it's better than Come and See.
Oh,
I don't even especially love this movie. I do think it's worth watching and important, and I liked it. But what about you, Chandler?
Um, I think I'll say this in two parts. The first part is just sort of understanding the film history of this. This is definitely not Pasolini's best work,
Mhm.
and I think what's also very important that this isn't how Pasolini wanted to be remembered as his last film.
Yeah.
Because as you know, he was murdered uh soon after this film was released.
like 2 weeks.
And so definitely to him, this wasn't like I don't think it was him trying to go all out on it. So,
It was not like it
but
wasn't a
otherwise,
conscious last film effort from him.
yeah, it wasn't like a conscious like, okay, guys, this is me in like the biggest way possible, and this is what you really have to listen to in regards to my world philosophy. Um, it was definitely a response. It was definitely him after making the Trilogy of Life sequel, just to show that like his vision of sexuality just can't exist because of modern consumption.
Mhm.
But otherwise, um, I guess so. The question is, do people have to see this?
Well, it's what could they get out of it, if
What do they
anything?
get out of it?
Why do they need to put themselves through an hour and a half, 2 hours to?
Yeah, I think in this particular moment, and this may be myself and my own view on this, I think that regardless of how open minded we are, I think that we still avoid these sort of things regardless. And I guess that even to really understand the depths of human nastiness, it's one thing to see it in Come and See in a fictionalized way, but I do think that these sort of showings are necessary just to sort of remind us that like I feel like with Come and See there's still a layer of removal.
It's in Come and See, the evilness is a lot more clinical. It's not there are moments definitely where the people take pleasure in the atrocities they're doing, but a
Mm,
majority of it is okay, this is war, this is what needs to be done. Whereas Sallow, these people are loving every second of it.
Well, which is kind of ironic because the whole film is very much filmed from almost an objective point of view, where you're
Yeah.
not supposed like none of it is filmed from a way that you or anyone actually looks like they're getting much pleasure from it. Like the camera isn't
no,
much commenting on any of this,
Yeah.
which
Well,
is what
that's
makes
what
it
keeps it from being
tolerable.
pornographic.
Right.
Yeah.
right. Pasolini, and people have said this about this film extensively, so this isn't a grand idea by myself. But Pasolini makes you almost become a participant
Hmm.
against your will,
You're like a guard.
much like the victims of
Hmm.
this film, where you're put in a place where you're just as hopeless as you know the victims. You don't get any sort of reprisal, any sort of breakaway, any sort of relief. This
Mhm.
is basically straight shotting the terrible ideas that we don't want to think about, the existential ones where if we truly acted upon, you know, every fabric of modern society breaks down, and we just, get so nervous about that. Um, I think that's why Salò is sort of necessary to hit that end.
Well, I suppose it's you're not really like I read some of that the idea that it makes you almost a victim or almost a part of it. The problem with that is that you can look away. You don't have to watch Solo. You don't have to you don't have to put yourself through this narrative in and of itself, which almost also adds to it in that the mere fact of watching it is you are running these series of terrible images in front of your mind. It is your fault almost for pushing play on this
But
horror
if
of
you're
humanity.
ignoring it, isn't it similar to ignoring? Isn't it almost like ignoring the fact that these kind of things happen?
Well, you can look at it from that philosophical point of view, but I feel like on a very normal level for most audiences you can't because it's a movie.
Well, I'm not necessarily suggesting everyone see this.
It's
Well, it's probably what
if
I
you
said.
think about it, it's just a movie. It is just their actors on a screen. Nothing bad is actually happening from
Yeah.
an objective point of view. And uh, yeah.
It's okay for me. It's similar to this is gonna sound like a very strange comparison, but it is true. To Do the Right Thing,
Hmm.
because Do the Right Thing, when I watch that, I think, oh man, this is so 80s in a lot of ways. But then you see things that happen, like what happened this weekend with the guy in Minnesota. We're like, oh, this is still relevant. This is still powerful, and it speaks to a lot to human nature. This, when I was watching this, something that kept coming into my mind was, okay, this is crazy, but did this happen? Sure enough, of course, this did happen. Is it still happening? And all I can really think about the whole time I was watching it was Epstein's island. Like, okay, I'm sure something similar is happening here. This stuff just happens. And seeing this and seeing just how horrible it can be, and sure, I'm sure it's played up. There's definitely some theatricality to it for the sake of cinema, but the whole nihilism and the just absolute lack of sympathy and empathy is something that I don't necessarily think has gone away. And I think it's just very powerful in the way that it makes you just feel hopeless. But there's something good in that where at least, okay, this is what we're capable of. And maybe in some way it inspires you to take action against it.
Well, that might be one of my problems is that it's very much not a film made to inspire you to anything. It's hopeless almost in its portrayal of
Mm,
these events.
I
And
don't know.
well, I don't know about
It's
you guys,
hopeless,
but
but the
it's
hopelessness is a power of its own.
yeah, but that's so much that's up to the interpretation and the experience of the audience to such a degree.
And
The
that's
film,
exactly it.
I give the film credits for not guiding the audience to its preferred stance on the subject,
Mhm.
you know, and but on the other end of that,
There are no
it's
sides to take here.
there is definitely a side to take, and I think the goal of such a here's the thing: all film is propaganda, all of it.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna make something, you want to make something that is both subtle and not necessarily forcing your ideas down the audience's throat, but also something in the end that you are inspiring them to be something greater or do something. And Salo leaves me with I just don't want to watch Salo again until maybe a few years later. Maybe I will. I will probably revisit this at some point. But
Oh,
there
I
are
spent $40 on it. I'm
uh,
definitely not going to just never touch it.
other channel. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Sorry for
I just feel that if you, because obviously, and like I feel like the main enemy, that the contemporary enemy that Pasolini was looking to showcase was not neo-fascism. He obviously hated it, but it's a metaphor for the consumer society. And I feel like, maybe this doesn't justify his actions, but this is definitely a man who's fed up, who's disgusted, who wants to show people, he wants to run out basically in the theater and grab them by the shoulders and shake them and say, look at this. This is what you're doing to yourselves. It's been done before, but it's still happening.
Mm-hmm.
And, I feel like that's how you have to interpret it. Not that, or you just have to interpret it that humans, I think that it does inspire you because, for one thing, you want to be better than the victims. You don't want to accept it. And also, you want to sort of just realize what's happening today and, I don't know, just take that action.
I subscribe to the belief that any movie that makes you feel strongly is worth viewing.
Yes, let me clarify my position here is that this is worth viewing from a film history and a film theory perspective, and very much so. I'm glad I watched this. But I think if we're talking about the average audience here,
to be fair, the average audience would not be interested in a large majority of the movies we've talked about.
Well, yeah, but I would still try to recommend one or two of them.
Yeah.
And Salò, I would say, I think there's utility in it, but I don't think that you're gonna get, most audiences is gonna get any of that utility, because I hear what you guys are saying. I don't think most people are ever gonna, like, it's essentially a wash when you show it to some random person and there's nothing there at the end of it.
If some random person tried to show me this movie, I would call the cops.
Yeah, no, that's definitely not something that you start a friendship with.
Date night movie, first date, Salò.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jokes.
Fantastic.
But it's on the BFI list. It's on the director's list. Let me clarify that one.
That doesn't surprise me.
Does it deserve to be here?
Yes.
I'm gonna say yeah. All right, Jacob, let's hear it.
No.
Split take.
Split take.
Roll the credits.
It's surprisingly rare that we have a split take on this podcast.
It's ironically enough, yes.
Sure.
No, I feel there are other films that from a cinematic perspective are not as repetitive, that introduce more ideas and are more, like, this film has an impact, but let's be honest, the films that this has inspired, none of them are on this list, and none of the people who voted on this list.
Not true. Cachet. Michelle Haneke is a huge fan of this movie.
Okay, I suppose, but not from a the more kind of depraved films that this has inspired. Not the
Gaspar Noé. I think you could say Irreversible is, because he again.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure Gaspar Noé has been inspired by this, but
John Waters as well. So you got violence,
but none of those,
depravity, and eating shit.
None of these movies are on the BFI list, and I'm pretty sure that
Cachet is.
Okay, yes, but they're very different movies. In a large part, I don't see the influence, because a lot of these movies I'm not really big on influence. I think a movie needs to stand on its own merits.
Yeah.
And then you can consider influence. So there's that. But then also, if it doesn't have much utility beyond the niche filmmaker perspective, or people who are interested very specifically in that, and if those are the only people who are going to get anything out of it, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I like it.
Which I don't want to give you the impression that I love this, because I don't. I'd say, well, I don't know. It's like a solid 4 out of 5 for me. but I do recognize its importance, not just as film history, but as sort of, well, as far as influence goes, I know you don't see any direct influence because it's kind of hard to, no one's putting a shit-eating scene in their movie as a
No. There's a
nod
lot.
to
There's
this.
like exploitation film that,
Yeah.
and I'm sure Pier Paolo Pasolini would hate exploitation films
Yes.
that partially have been inspired by this film, but
again, the depths of which movies went to, I don't know if there's anything comparable to this before this.
No, there's
that
horror
is exactly why I would
after it.
suggest that any comparison or any reason to think about influences, I think just sort of goes against the film. It's almost a film removed from other films.
Yeah. It's not revolutionary in the way that it sort of inspired other people to capture the feeling of this. It's inspirational or revolutionary because it sort of opened the floodgates for what you could do.
Right, it pushed the boundary of
Yes.
film and what you can show.
Yeah.
I don't really care for a lot of like visually of like what this film is portraying.
Yeah, it's repetitive visually.
It's not for me whatsoever. And with that being said, if I was way back, if this film came to me and like, are you going to censor this? I'm like, no, this film needs to be released.
Yeah.
It's important, but there's something else. Oh, if we're making like a top 200 movies, I'd put it there. I don't think it's much.
Okay.
I don't think it's far out of the top 100, but I'm not sure it deserves to be there. And I guess I was thinking Schindler's List is not in the top 100, which I think is a crime in and of itself. And I can't put Salò above Schindler's List. So I think
there's a lot of movies that
that's just for
Salò
me,
above. But that's complete. I'd put
that makes me feel a little dirty, but
yeah.
No Schindler's List, but there's Salò. Sad. Still glad I watched it. Not sure why I own it, but I have it now, and I will enjoy the special features at the very least.
It's a staple in most Criterion collections.
Yeah, a rite of passage for collectors.
There's pre-Salò and post-Salò collections,
and it has retained that nice smell for me. So
I'm sure
I can smell Salò.
Lovely. Lovely.
Any final thoughts from Chandler or Chandler?
Oh, the packaging is amazing. The Criterion edition.
It's a good one. Yep.
It's great. A lot of special features that I did not look at.
I think it has one of the thickest books.
Yeah.
Out of all of them. It's a thick one.
There are a lot of essays.
A lot of essays.
There's a lot to say. Let's be real.
6 essays. Well, the second essay, I was reading it and it played into some of my least favorite movie theory tropes of where I was reading it. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Remind me of that one. That was the
it was from the one director. It was I, Monster.
Right.
No, it's just like sometimes some people write essays and it's strictly their personal reaction to the film. And then they say, here's my personal reaction. This film is a masterpiece of cinema. Like, those two things don't follow.
It's a masterpiece because I think it is a masterpiece.
Yes, essentially. There needs to be
all you need to know.
Final thoughts. I guess it's just because I don't want to say enjoy, but I find it important for myself to seek out these sort of hopeless things. I think that it's just a very important film, and I think that at least, like, I can totally respect all of your guys' opinions on it, even if it's negative. I feel like at least the fact that it exists and it's preserved, I think that it would just be far more scary if this film no longer existed.
It makes the landscape of film so much bigger.
Right. I think once we turn our back on this sort of stuff is when we have problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Looks like we're split.
But only so much.
No, yeah.
Nah, we're good.